It is that time. Hey, everybody. This is Kevin Kresge. I am the Digital Marketing Director at Grit Marketing Group, and welcome to the first podcast. Wow, podcast, geez. I actually said that. Facebook Live from our new offices over here on Market Street, well, technically 283 West Mason Avenue in York. As you can see, the building is kind of long. It goes all the way back to Market Street at the front end of the building. So, got a huge, really awesome office space here. Encourage you to swing by sometime and check it out if you're in the area. It's pretty cool. But anyway, we're talking about blogging today. So enough about our new office, and I'm gonna start talking about blogging. So we actually created a blog post about this exact topic, and we called it How to Write for a Blog, and hence the title for our video today. But before we get started, gratuitous self-promotion. We would love it if you went over to creategrit.com, our website, and signed up for the Nitty Gritty newsletter. It is where we collect up all of our thoughts each month and send them out to you. We even promote our upcoming live videos, so you have a chance to check those out as well, like this one today. Glad to see a few people already joining. Go ahead and announce yourselves if you've joined up. Love to say hi to you. We are gonna go ahead and get started then, but once again, check out the newsletter. It is pretty cool. Just go ahead and check it out. Sign up today. Don't be afraid. Don't worry, we won't spam you. Anyway, so our Facebook Live today is called How to Write for a Blog, and it's simple tips to live by when you're writing for blogs. So it's pretty interesting how blogs were developed. I mean, initially they were kind of a platform used to just share thoughts and experiences, kind of like predecessor almost to social media. But the cool thing is that blogs have evolved into something much bigger than that. They've evolved into something where we're able to share as businesses and brands. We're able to share, thoughts and ideas as a business, and be able to use them to promote our own ideas, our own products, our own thoughts. Hey, we just got a hello here from Julie. Julie, it's cool to talk to you, and the fact that you're in Turks and Caicos and you're hitting us up. You're on vacation. Stay on vacation. But if you want to keep watching, that's okay. Anyway, as businesses, as brands, we can use blogs to promote our own ideas. We can use these to promote our own ideas and products. And it's a pretty simple concept, but it can be a bit challenging when we get into the technicals of how we actually go about doing that. One, without it sounding way too product promotional, and not coming off like we're really just working to sell somebody something, but to actually share real, genuine ideas that not only enhance our brand presence, enhance our brand ideas, but also work to improve our presence in search. Because one of those key tools that we can use blogs for is getting our content out there, promoting our websites, and appearing more strongly in search, which is definitely something that should be on the mind of every brand with a website that has a blog on it. So as we were putting blogs together, there's about 7 to 10 rules that we tend to live by. I'm going to give you 7 today. But they're very important rules to use when you're putting together blog content for your website. Rule number 1, I'm just going to jump right in. Make sure you've researched your topic. The reason for this is you want to understand how people refer to what it is you're writing about. Are you using the right keywords? Is it something that's going to come up in search? What questions are people asking about what you're writing about? It's very important to get that information ahead of time so that you can write the most effective content. And not only that, and we'll get into some of the titling and code a bit later so that we can get, how we can leverage this research more effectively on the back end of the site. And now I've got everybody just messing with me about the awesomeness that is my beard. And so much of my authority and power as the digital marketing director is derived from the power of my beard. But thanks, Cooper. I appreciate the question. Anyway, back into discussing research. So we take this research and we apply it to the keywords that we use to writing the blog. We apply it to the content that we write. If people are asking questions about what we're writing about, what are those questions? This is what we're looking up with. This is what we're looking up as part of that research. Beyond that, how do I write an effective title? This is rule number 2. You want to make sure you're using a title that is going to attract attention, that is going to capture your users and say, I think I want to read that. Doing that is the great way to take that research that you've done and use the question as a title. How do I do X with this product? And for companies that produce products or have services, answering the how-tos and what do I questions as part of your title is ideal because it lays it right into search. And not only that, when we get into some of the structure, the content structure in a bit, you'll see how that plays out a little bit more effectively for search and the way Google likes it when you structure your content, making it work a little bit harder for you. Our next rule, number 3, make sure that you're including links in your article, not only to your own stuff, right? Because if you're marketing products, if you're talking about products, if you're talking about a solution to a problem that involves a product that you sell or a service that you market, what you want to do is include a link to that as part of your blog. Beyond that, you want to make sure that you are including links to any research that you've found, studies that you've discovered that prove your results. You'll notice that in a lot of Grit's blogs, we have one that's coming up here really soon on the new Instagram TV. That should be coming out within the next week. Check our website for that. But in that, for example, this is a perfect example. We reference various articles that talk about Instagram TV, that discuss the new concept, the new platform, how it works, what to expect, ways to use it, that sort of thing. So those articles are great, and you want to make sure you include it because it does a couple of things. One, it gives you an outbound link profile. You also want one of those on your website, making sure that you're linking to content that's relevant to what you're posting or your products and services. And not only that, it also lends credence to you as an authoritative writer. You want to make sure that people know what you're talking about, that you know what you're talking about, right? They can trust you as an advocate for the brand, that it kind of solidifies your brand voice, as it were, right? So take that content, make sure that you're lacing those links in that kind of proves your point, reinforces your points. It shows that you've done your homework, right, to make sure that your blog is more convincing. Beyond that, make sure that you're using good images or videos. This is rule 4 and 5. Images is rule 4. Using videos is rule 5. You can use both. Videos can be a bit better. A great idea for using videos as blogs is to do like a whiteboard session where you're discussing how to use a product or service, or just strategies for whatever market or industry you're in. But from an ADA compliance perspective, this is important to include. From an ADA compliance perspective, if you're using a video, make sure that you're including a transcript of the video as part of your article, so that from an ADA compliance visual disability perspective, that people who are using screen readers have the ability to actually consume your content, can actually, they can listen to the video, but somebody who's hearing impaired is going to want to be able to use closed captioning or read a transcript, for example. So making sure that you're on board with the ADA compliance when it comes to that sort of thing is just best practice, all right? So that's where those rules come into play. Make sure you're using good dynamic images and videos. And another ADA point, if you're doing images, make sure you're putting alt tags behind those images that describe in detail that image and how it impacts whatever you're talking about in the blog, because your keywords also get indexed on your media files that you include in your post, okay? So from a search perspective, best practice, make sure you're doing it. Next rule, rule number 6. Make sure that you're closing out your article with some kind of action for the user to take, all right? You want your users to contact you. You want your users to buy the product or look at a service, consider a service that you offer as part of your blog, right? So making sure that you've put that out there is a good option. It's a strong recommendation, right? It's a good rule to follow. Make sure you're closing that article with a good, strong call to action. And not only that, make sure that your call to action is clear. What I see in a lot of blog writing when I go out to websites and check out industry sites is there's a huge paragraph at the end that is the whole call to action. And people don't tend to do what you want sometimes if your call to action isn't just direct and clear. So keep the call to action simple, just a couple of words. If you want people to contact you, say, contact us today is your link to talk about this, or have a button there that says contact us, right? Make it very easy and very direct. One of the things that you'll find over the years with internet marketing, content marketing, websites is that people tend to do what you tell them to do. If you say, click this button, people are more inclined to click the button. It's just nature of the beast as part of what we do in marketing, okay? So keep these 7 rules in mind, all right? Beyond that, we're going to get into some, we're going to keep moving through the blog here, right? So our next step is make sure you understand basic HTML. I cannot stress this enough. You need to understand basic HTML. And the reason for this is for search purposes. You should, if you're going to work on any website, you should have a baseline understanding of how HTML works, how the things that you do in code impact what people see on the published version of the website. The reason for this is kind of dual, in the sense that you want to make sure that the content displays the way you want it to show up, right? You want it to format the way you want it to. Are the fonts all right? Is even being able to go into the code and or a back-end system like a WordPress or a Magento is the easiest way. Understanding this helps immensely, making sure things show up correctly. But then the other purpose of this is to make sure that Google has the ability to clearly understand your content, understand how it's formatted, and then also make sure that it's reinforcing your position in search and actually helping your website in search results as opposed to hurting it. Because it is possible to write stuff that doesn't help your, doesn't help search for your overall brand, and can even negatively impact you if it's done, poorly enough. It can even hurt you. So we're going to take a look at. Wow, I'm just getting nailed by the sun here. Let's take a look into code, right? So I was getting into this a little bit there, but there's a basic code structure that people should follow for, for websites, and making sure that Google really, really likes your page structure. And it follows a standard kind of document outline structure that you would use in like a Microsoft Word, basic paragraph formatting, where you have various levels of headlines that you can use, like heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Usually heading 1 through heading 6 are your pretty standard headline formats that you can go after. Inside those headlines, you want to use them in order of importance, right? So H1 is your most important. This is your broad general topic that the page is going to discuss. Google is going to look at that H1 tag. That's what we call it in code, is H1. Google's going to look at that H1 tag, and it's going to expect that headline to relate directly and specifically to the content and all of the content that's encompassed within the page, right? So this is where you would lace in from that research, right? Rule number 1, you would lace in some of those broader, like shorter kind of strong keywords that would impact what you're doing, right? So say, for example, if I'm marketing a certain type of software, and I'm talking about how that software impacts a specific industry, my overall headline, my broader headline might be something as simple as blank software in X industry, right? Great headline. Google's going to go, okay, well, that's what this page is about. And then you break in through your content with the H2s, the H3s, and break that down, and all of your content underneath that can be related to that overarching topic that's covered in the H1, and you can get into some of your more specific keywords at that point. I'm going to show you right now, kind of an example of, talking about content structure, and I got into that a little bit, but I'm going to show you this sort of example of what that looks like. And here in this code example, you can see up at the top, right, you've got your H1, and then there's a short paragraph that, kind of details out what, what you're going to be covering in the overall article, right? Now you'll notice here that I have UL and LI as tags, right? This is an unordered list, and then list item. That's what those stand for. So this would be also referred to as a bulleted list. Now, The reason that we're doing this from a content structure perspective is Google absolutely loves when you give short answers. When you can say to Google, hey, here's what we're going to cover. Like say if my H1, my article title is how do I do X? And my bullets are short, punchy answers of here's answer 1, answer 2, answer 3. And if it's steps, you can use a numbered list. So if I have to take steps to answer the question, then I use an ordered list, an OL instead of a UL. And what'll happen there is that tells Google right away, here are the short answers. If you're a Reddit fan, or if you use the internet a lot, you'll see a version of this called the TLDR, which means too long didn't read. This top section right here is that TLDR version of your blog that Google loves to put at a little what they call an info block, right at the top of the search results. So if it's an area that there's not a lot of discussion in, it's very easy for a brand or a business to take over that info block with simple answers to questions, right? So that's what you're after with this top section. And then you drop a short section like, hey, and if you want more detail on this, keep moving on, right? Keep reading. Then you break into your H2s and your H3s where you're breaking out a little bit more content that's detailed sections on, maybe some more interesting or you break out your bullet points basically. So point number 1 might be my first H2 where I'm saying like, okay, step 1 is X. And then I might have sub-steps under step 1 that say like, okay, so this is what you can expect to see when you do this. And it makes the content quick to use for the user the way it's structured, but it also makes it more detailed and more specific for the user. So if they want to read on, they get more detail out of it, right? And then so on and so forth with the H2s and the H3s. And like I said, you can go up to H6 with these, but it doesn't go beyond H6. And then always making sure that you don't always have to use the paragraph tags. That's the P tag there. You don't always have to use those, but from kind of an HTML best practice perspective, it's good to do, and it also makes it easier for you to classify, style, and kind of contain your text a little bit, and really make sure everything looks the way you want it to look from the front end. So we can actually look at this point, we can talk about actual content, like handling your actual content, right? So your whole article really shouldn't be, I've seen various studies and articles that show this. Your articles should be relatively short. And by relatively short, ideal length for a blog is about 500 words. If you go over that, that is okay, but there's a writing style to a blog that you kind of want to follow, which is headline, short paragraph, headline, short paragraph. And the reason I say that is studies have shown over the years that people process and follow short sections of text more easily than they do long, really kind of run-on sentencey, huge paragraphs. Remember, you're writing a blog. It's a short entry. It's not a novel. If you want to write a novel, that's another video. That's another Facebook Live. We're talking about writing blogs. So, I know there's, people out there that love to write in that kind of novelesque format where they're, dropping out huge paragraphs. I would bet that if you were to compare analytics on 2 articles, one styled with the short punchy paragraphs with headlines, and one where it was like the massive paragraph of, just flowing text, that you're going to see that your dwell time on the pages and scroll depth, and those 2 things are basically how long users spend on the page, average time on page, right, is going to be your kind of metric in analytics. And then scroll depth is another metric that we can pull in analytics, but how far users actually read down your page. What you're going to find is that your short, punchier articles are 70 to 100% scroll depth and have a longer dwell time, where your run-on sentencey articles, your novelesque articles, they're not going to have the dwell time that the shorter, punchier ones do, and they certainly aren't going to have the scroll depth. People get bored with reading giant blocks of text. They get lost in it, and especially if the style formatting isn't laid out well, if it doesn't read easily, like if you use a weird typeface, like if you use a weird font, don't break up your text into easy parsable sections. You're going to find that people get out of there. They don't want to read it. It's a pain to actually read. It's hard to read. So, when we're talking about your actual content, you want to make sure that you're keeping it concise, clear, make it easy for people to use, right? Some other recommendations that we can look at. Making sure that if you're using a system, now blogs are far easier if you're using a system like a CMS, a content management system, like WordPress. Now we primarily here at Grit, we primarily build in WordPress unless we're building like an e-commerce website where we're looking at other platforms like Magento, because they're just, depending on the type of store, it's more appropriate to use a platform like Magento, but you still get search engine optimization options and blogging capability on either platform. But WordPress was literally built to be a blog and has become so much more. But here's the deal, right? So you want to make sure that if you're using one of these, you're using other tools to help WordPress work well for search and help you optimize your content. And there are plugins like Yoast SEO, that's YOAST SEO. It's a plugin, it's free. Really incredible plugin for being free. It gives you a lot of capabilities when it comes to search. But it helps you do things like automate, if configured properly, you can automate your page titles and your meta descriptions for your blog posts. You don't actually have to manually write those. Matt Cutts, who no longer works for Google, and condolences, Matt. Hopefully you're watching this, buddy. But condolences on the loss of your wife. Once again, that was just ultra sad, man. But even Matt has said, now he's no longer with Google, but when he was writing blogs for them, years ago, he was saying even he doesn't manually write descriptions for every single blog post because, it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be there for these what are relatively low authority pages. There's some other advantages to doing this, not directly writing a description for each blog post. One of those is that when Google indexes your content, you'll get a point or two negative ding for not having the description there, but it allows Google to go in and create a custom description in search results that leverages the keywords that people have searched for and kind of shuffle the content a little bit so that the users can see from search results that this article deals with exactly what they were looking for, right? So you can put a custom description in there if you want to. Certainly we do when we're writing for pages, not posts, on websites that we build, because we want to be more clear in search about this is what you're looking for, this is something that you want to click on, and we direct people to click on that page out of search using the description. It's basically free. I go back to that statement earlier of telling people what to do. It's basically a free way to tell people this is what you're looking for, click here now, go to our website, right? But then your website has to deliver, or that'll negatively impact your search. So making sure that descriptions are written well is also very, very important. So there's that. Let's talk about some other considerations here as we move on. So some other things to consider and some best practices, right? So the other cool thing that these plugins can do is make sure that you have been using those targeted keywords that you pulled out of your research in all the right places. Making sure that they're in the page title, they're in your headlines, they're in your body content, they're showing up in the URL for the post, what's called either the slug or the URI. You'll hear those terms generally all kind of used synonymously. What you're after there is making sure that the tools will help you make sure that you've checked all those boxes, that you've got your strong keywords in there. If you upgrade to the Pro version of Yoast, which is even cooler, you can set multiple keywords that you can track, and it'll actually tell you whether or not you've used your primary, secondary, tertiary keywords in such a way that it really helps drive people to your content. Like, you're gonna show up in search more quickly than other people. You also want to make sure that you're giving credit where credit is due. And this is something to consider. I talked about it earlier, though, as part of the rules. But if you're going to reference somebody else's material, or if you're going to talk about somebody else, you're going to talk about a study, or if you're even going to kind of use one of the strategies that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes as far as writing your content, make sure that you are referencing the people who wrote the original content, right? If you talk about a study from, say, Wired, reference the Wired article and link to it. It's just best practice. It shows that you do your reading and your research, but it's also showing people that you're giving credit where credit's due. You're not trying to take credit for their idea of article writing, right? We want to make sure that we're doing which is why you'll see that on most of our blogs, that we write as a business here at Grit. When we're informing people of industry shifts, we're including links to studies, we're including links to source articles, right? Best practice, definitely want to be doing that. The other thing that you can do is, if you are really just reposting someone else's content, which, not a best practice, but you can do it, make sure that you go into that Yoast tool and use their canonical link item, and you can actually take the URL from the original post that you found out online, and you can direct that canonical URL to the original post. So while you may show up in search, it also tells Google that I understand that I'm referencing enough of that content that this may look like I'm duplicating their content. I don't want to be penalized, and I don't want them to be penalized. And then what you also want to do at that point is say, hey, right at the top of the article, credit the original author. Make sure that you're doing that, all right? So what's next? What are your next steps in talking about blogging, right? So it's important to understand that, making sure that Google has properly indexed your site, properly indexed your blog, and so making sure that you're connected. Now, I'm not going to talk about this today in depth, but making sure you're connected to all those Google tools, right? Google Search Console, formerly Webmaster Tools, Analytics. And what those do is give you the ability to ensure that your content is being indexed, that if you need to have a sitemap that includes your posts, you have the ability to upload that sitemap into Search Console, so Google knows that the post exists and can go in and crawl it. You want to be doing that. Outside of that, talk to an expert. If you're stuck, if you're a brand manager, if you're a marketing director, if you're a marketing manager, if you're somebody who's handling social media and blogging for your company or brand, and you're stuck and you feel like you can't do this stuff, or you feel like you can't write this content, that's why we're here. You can reach out to us here at Grit. Once again, creategrit.com. More shameless self-promotion right here on this Facebook Live video. It's unbelievable, right? Just totally unbelievable. Anyway, we did have a few questions come in to our blog post, but we haven't gotten too many questions other than, about my glorious beard. Once again, Cooper, thank you for that question about my beard. And we can talk later, man, about beard care products, because beard maintenance is important. But once again, that's not what this Facebook Live is about. So if you're, we did have some, like I said, we did have some questions come in to our blog. One of those is, somebody who's a new blogger, and they're asking us, in our blog, we're referencing that, including a link to the original article when quoting helps lend authority, which is true. You definitely want to make sure that we're including those links for authority purposes. But how else can someone make themselves appear as an authority figure? Now, a couple of things there. So a few years ago, Google had an engine. They actually had an authority engine that they had built where, I'm trying to remember, I think they just called it Google Authorship or something along those lines. It died pretty hard, pretty fast, where you could set up a Google profile, and you would use Google Plus for this. They're kind of mediocre to fair social media platform that basically never took off. And really kind of, I think, underrated, because you can do some pretty cool stuff with Google Plus that the other platforms have kind of followed up on and taken to the next level. But Google was doing it first, but not as well, I think, in the long run. But I mean, I've used Google Plus. Anyway, that's a whole nother, I'm not going to dive down that rabbit hole. But the important thing to know is, you could set up an author profile on there. You set up a profile on Google Plus, and within the Google Plus profile, you can link to all of the other platforms that you appear on. So if you have your website with your blog, right? Make sure you link to that. If you have profiles on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, where you're uploading videos or posting content, make sure that you're linking to all of those. You can create a link profile inside of one of Google's primary tools that they use. And that link profile gives you the ability to link out to all those things. And what that tells Google is, I am an author and I'm writing, and these are all the places that you can find my content, and that's why I have more authority. And as you do these things, it lends you more credibility with Google and with other search engines. So that's how you manage that. Mentioned doing keyword research before writing blog posts. I usually just write blog posts based on random topics that relate to my business, How can I get started with keyword research? This is a great question. There's a couple easy free ways to do this. There's some tools for this. You can get a free account with SEMrush, SEMrush. You can do keyword research on there and look for related keywords to your industry and primary keywords for different topics that you want to write about, and figure out how strongly they trend in the United States. There's also other free tools like Google Trends. You can, trending topics, you can see how many people are searching for a topic and what regions they're searching for those things in, say within the US or even in the world globally. Google tracks that information. If there's enough search volume, you can see if people will actually be interested in what you want to write about. So there's that. So there's some free tools that you can use for the keyword research. The other tool, honestly, is Google itself. It's kind of funny. There's some great videos that are very, very entertaining, if not a little bit risque, maybe not quite safe for work. But if Google was a guy, you got to Google these from a group called College Humor. There's 5 videos, but they kind of get into how Google works for predictive search. And if you've ever gone to Google and you've typed in a couple of words and Google's been like, oh, hey, you're interested in this, why are people, and then you get some really unique sentence kind of completions to that suggested by Google. You can actually use those to find your better keywords that you then want to write about. And most importantly, that's actually a great place to go to find out the questions that people are asking. How to, what if, those kind of questions that you can answer directly with the title of your blog. All right. Another question, right? In the blog, we discussed dividing content into concise sections, right? I talked about this. Really, analytics, I'm going to reinforce this. Analytics shows us that paragraph-oriented, paragraphs with headlines, nice short 100, 200-word content blocks tend to work better than massive paragraphs where it's like, the whole page is just dwarfed by content. Keep the paragraphs simple, concise, make it easy to digest for people that are coming in to read. People aren't looking for huge opinion pieces if you're writing for a brand. They're looking for simple, short, concise answers, and then you can use the attractiveness of your blog content to push them to take an action. You can move them into a conversion funnel, right? Beyond that, this is a great question. What changes if I'm writing for a B2B audience as opposed to B2C? Actually, you'd be surprised. Not a whole lot. The questions change a little bit. The calls to action might change a little bit because a B2C blog post might be more product promotional, whereas a B2B is going to be more service oriented. So your calls to action change a little bit. How you maybe link your article sources that you link to and from might be a little bit different. But for the most part, you're going to find that the content and the content structure, how you write in general, basically trying to answer questions, those strategies when you implement them don't really change much from audience to audience. A few things do that are important to change. Like you don't want to use B2B calls to action for people that are trying to buy products, right? For consumers, unless they're looking for a service, like carpet cleaning or something like that. You don't want to use a service-oriented, contact our business. You don't want to do that. You're not generating leads, you're selling product. There is a little bit of a difference as far as the calls to action and how you close out your blog post, but that's about it. Another great question. I've seen this myself. Someone asked about paying for a service to write blog posts because I'm too busy. You can do this. I've been contacted. P.S. I love, and that is the sarcastic love, getting cold calls about paid content writing platforms that we can integrate into our website and all that nonsense. You can do this, and these people can certainly research and write content for you and generate a ton of content, which may or may not help you in search. Google over the last year has become a little more leery of dynamically inserted blog content that's coming from third-party domains into a website. They tend to ignore it more than if it's native to the website. So paying for blog content, from those platforms, probably not going to help you out. Your ROI on that is going to be about nil. However, if you're sponsoring ghostwriters, or not even ghostwriters, but if you're bringing in known writers who are in the space, like the market in which your business lives in. You know, say if you're doing home remodeling and you bring in a well-known designer to write a blog article for you, that is stellar paid content, and that's okay because it gets posted natively on your platform. It gets posted natively on your website. So that's totally fine. If you want to have a personality write for you and you want to pay them, totally okay. Call out the fact that it's them writing for you. You know, make sure that people see that, because that's going to help. You're going to get lift by the fact that their name is on the article as the author. Let's see, some other questions. Really, I talked about the authority piece. Oh, target audiences, man. You really, when you're doing your research, you really want to think about your target audience. You know, who am I writing to? And that comes back to that whole B2B, B2C conversation a little bit. You know, but if you're writing a blog about how your business or service fits into a specific industry, well, make sure that you're writing to that industry. If you're serving the like mining or aggregate community, but you're writing an article that's geared towards electricians, well, really, that's not going to work too well. You know, so you know, it's not going to play with the audience necessarily. It might, you know, those were just two kind of out of the ether examples there. But you know, you want to make sure that you're thinking about who you're writing to and write specifically to that audience. Beyond that, whose problem are you solving? Are you actually solving a problem for them? If you're just writing ideas and throwing stuff out there that doesn't solve a problem or doesn't answer a question for somebody, it's not going to be very effective content. People aren't really going to stumble on it because it may not be addressing that question. You know, there's a couple different strategies where we can leverage the different content the way it's written, right? If I'm answering a question, I don't necessarily have to promote that on, say, social media or like LinkedIn or Facebook. Because people aren't going to be necessarily asking that question on Facebook. They're going to be asking that question on Google. So making sure that blog post is well indexed and comes up in Google, great strategy. But if you're writing a top 5 or a top 10 or, you know, top whatever, or 5 mistakes not to make, right? 3 quick fixes, right? Those are great social media headlines. Think BuzzFeed. You know, the clickbaitiness is a little bit annoying, but they are headlines that will get people to at least consider looking at your content. And then if you've written your lead in well enough that appears underneath the headline on the social media platform with a great picture, make sure you have a nice dynamic image there. Chances are people are going to click through. It's going to be effective content you've written to your audience. You're going to be catching their attention. So, you know, these are the ways that you want to think about as you're writing. And who am I writing to, and how am I solving their problem, right? Lastly, question came in about content strategies. Like, how do I write? How do I come up with ideas to write? Well, it's pretty simple. When you start doing your research, you start thinking about whose problems you're solving. You can build almost like an idea cloud in the sense of, you know, who am I writing to, and then what are their problems, and then you can start, you know, as you branch out from in your content cloud, right? You can start coming up with ideas that address each one of the bubbles as you move out from the center. As you're moving out from that center, the things become more and more specific, and what you'll find is you've now written an entire blog post, and it all but writes itself. If you find that you've got a competitor, now this is a competitive writing strategy, find that you've got a competitor that writes content. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't share this one because, you know, we write some of this content and I don't want our competitors to like get an idea, but, you know, we're in 40 minutes on this video, so they probably aren't watching anymore, right? But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to use what we call a skyscraper strategy. You can actually find this if you Google it. I'm not going to take credit for this one. I found this elsewhere. I'm not going to share the link because I'm not going to bother looking it up. But it is out there if you Google skyscraper strategy, skyscraper content strategy, right? But the way you do this is you build on what somebody else has built. If somebody has top 3 reasons, you write top 5, top 7. If they have top 5, you write top 10. And not only do you top their content, but you write better content, because I guarantee you they're not using a lot of these best practices. Or they might not be indexed well in search. There's ways that you can overcome. You can build a bigger skyscraper. right? As was the whole thing in like the 1920s, the early 20th century, when everybody was racing to have the tallest building. We can do this with our content a little bit and build a bigger, better content, and just do a better job than the other guy. And as a result, what you'll find, heck, I wrote a blog post 2 years ago now that was posted on our website, used a tag inadvertently. I didn't create the tag for it in our WordPress system, but just the tag, the words were never used in the article, but it was a copyrighted term used by somebody else. And we started trending in search off of a WordPress tag, not even the article content, better than they did. We were appearing in search better than them, and it was their thing, right? And we actually got an email asking us to stop doing that. But that's the power of doing it better than the other guy. Because, if you're doing the content well, if you're doing the content better than them, you can easily take over search where you might never have even thought that you could take over search, right? So that's pretty much it, I think, for today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to write them in. If you have more for me than what's already been submitted, I definitely want to make sure that we answer your questions. I'm about to break free here, but feel free to comment on the video. We will get back to you. The other option that you have is if you go to our website at creategrit.com, you can reach out directly through our contact form. I'm accessible, Kevin at creategrit.com. You can reach me directly if you want, but that is, another option for you for asking questions. You don't have to do it online. If you want it to be kept, a secret or whatever, that you're seeking help, that's fine. We're more than, and we're very secretive folks here. Anyway, that was it for today. I'm not going to fail to mention our newsletter again. Head over to creategrit.com/newsletter. You can sign up for our newsletter, the Nitty Gritty newsletter from Grit. Great content every month, and you get to learn everything that we know. Well, what we're willing to share. Like I said, we're secretive folks. But what you want to do is sign up for that, and you will always get the best content from us. And once again, as always, we appreciate you checking out the video today and every time that we offer a live video. Once again, it was awesome to present Facebook Live today from our new office here, 283 West Mason Avenue in York. You can see this really cool space that I have behind me, and a couple of people chilling back there, as the video's been going on. But it has been really great to speak with you today, and y'all have a great day, have a great weekend, and talk to you next time. Take care.